Chair, Section 7 of this bill represents a fundamental attack on the provisions of the Climate Action Act, passed in this House in 2021 with the support of 129 members from the Green Party, from the Labour Party, from the Social Democrats, from People Before Profit, from Sinn Féin and, crucially, from Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael as well. And now, 5 years later, this critical infrastructure bill means that any project that is designated as critical infrastructure will no longer have its climate impact examined. Today, the government are seeking to repeal, by the back door, a central aspect of the Climate Action Act. Let me set out how the critical infrastructure bill does this. Section 15 of the Climate Action Act 2021 puts a legal duty on public bodies to perform their actions in a manner that is consistent with the Climate Act. It places a climate duty on all public bodies, on the National Transport Authority, on Comisiún Pleanála, the Minister's own Department of Public Expenditure, all public bodies. And what Section 7 of this bill does is, when Minister Chambers designates a project or programme as critical infrastructure, that climate duty no longer applies. To put this into context, over Christmas, the Minister for Climate, Darragh O'Brien, announced that the government was giving up on achieving Ireland's 2030 emissions targets 4 years before the deadline. Today, this bill proposes to remove the climate duty from public bodies when they are undertaking assessments of major projects in the area of water, transport, energy, the very projects that will be the most consequential in our ability to meet those climate targets. The real-life implications of Section 7 is to specifically deny bodies, like on Comisiún Pleanála, the ability to take consideration about the climate impact of major projects into account when they are making decisions about granting them planning permission. This applies irrespective of whether the project has a potentially positive climate impact, like the wind farm in the Cool Glass judgment, or a negative impact, like a new LNG terminal. So, ironically, Section 7 of the bill will actually prevent the climate benefits of some projects counting in favour of whether that project should be granted planning permission. Let's take an example. Say the National Transport Authority is trying to advance a new Lewis line and there's a judicial review challenge to it on the basis that somebody doesn't want their garden CPO'd. The argument that in deciding to advance the project, the NTA was fulfilling their climate duty under Section 15 of the Climate Action Act, that argument will no longer be available to the NTA because of Section 7 of this bill. So while projects that are going to have a negative climate impact are going to be shielded by this bill, the big projects that actually will have a positive climate impact will actually lose the additional legal protection that they enjoy as a result of the climate duty. So considering how damaging Section 7 is, why is it being proposed? This bill is being promoted by the government on the basis of cutting timelines and eliminating delays. Yes, we need to speed up our planning system, and there are elements in the government's accelerating infrastructure plan I welcomed last December, and if they were in a standalone bill, I'd have no problem supporting. But the government has produced no evidence that the climate duty is delaying infrastructure delivery. When Minister Chambers launched the Accelerating Infrastructure Report in December, there wasn't one single reference to the Climate Action Act as a source of delays. I've put the question to civil servants in both the Transport Committee and the Climate Committee about whether removing the climate duty will speed up the process, and on both occasions the relevant civil servants were unable to say yes, this will speed up the process. This evening the Minister has indicated he's advancing Section 7 because of judicial reviews. Minister, can you enumerate the judicial reviews that have been taken on the basis of Section 15 to date? Can you list them for us? Because, Ceann Comhairle, Section 7 isn't about speeding up the delivery of infrastructure. It's about repealing the Climate Action Act by the back door, and it's about protecting carbon-intensive projects, the very projects that have caused our existing high levels of emissions as a country, protecting them from public scrutiny. No pre-legislative scrutiny was permitted on this bill, despite its huge implications for climate and planning policy. So in place of PLS, Minister, can I ask you a couple of questions? Can you confirm that a strategic infrastructure project can only cover a project being proposed by a state body or agency, and that it cannot cover a privately funded project? Can you state if you intend for data centres to fall within the definition of what could be designated as critical infrastructure? And can you confirm that a direction under Section 6.2 of the bill cannot include a direction to a local authority or commission planola to grant or reject planning permission for a specific project? In your conclusion, Minister, you spoke about judicial reviews being taken for ideological reasons. And I believe that this bill represents an act of gross irresponsibility. But I do recognise that it is entirely consistent with the approach your government has taken since you assumed office last January. Because there is ideology at play here. There's a clear ideology articulated across Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Independents. And that ideology is to lessen, to undermine, to defund and to reverse climate action whenever you get the opportunity. And as I said when I spoke in the confidence motion and on your retreat from the carbon tax earlier today, this government has demonstrated that it does not possess the belief in our energy transition, in the decarbonisation of our economy, to be able to make the case for that change convincingly to the Irish people. And this bill is one more articulation of that ideology which lies at the very heart of this government.